Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
There are forces in nature, invisible forces that act upon all physical objects and beings. Some of these forces can be destructive or restricting, such as friction or gravity, and others can be constructive or multiplying, such as focus and repetition. Today, we want to consider one of these forces and determine how we might use it to be more successful. So lace up your sneakers as Scott and I investigate creating the Big Mo and other mesmerizing concepts on episode 586 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
For some reason, I'm thinking about a land far, far away. Like this is the opening of a Star Trek episode. And kind of
in a world.
Yeah, gravity and objects and being. It's going to be an interesting topic. I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
All right. But before that, though, we got the book club, which is really a great chapter this time.
Yeah. Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. We're covering chapters 4, pages 67 through 88. And you know why the pages are all the same? Because the book has not been revised since it was created in 1976. But the SPIN is an acronym, and it stands for situational. P is for problem, I is for implication, and N is the needs payoff. So we've got an acronym that we're using in a sales process. And this is a questioning process that salespeople should use to really uncover. I think the goal is to uncover value in a conversation. But before we get into the SPIN selling questions, I really think that we need to deal with a couple of things that turn prospects off about salespeople. And that is that salespeople can be assumptive. And when we're assumptive, we assume that everybody has a problem, everybody wants to change, and everybody wants to buy our product. And that's simply not true. And the other thing is that prospects hate giving up control. So we need to be able to recognize that. And I think the best way to have a great questioning series is to start with qualifying questions. And I think setting up a qualifying question as a yes, no gives you permission to proceed. And in the business that Bill and I are in, I often ask the question, do you ever bring in subject matter experts on sales development for your team? That is a qualifying question that prevents me from being assumptive.
Right.
Another question is, do you ever evaluate your current solution before you reorder it? You know, you're kind of doing an assessment and going, maybe there's a better way. Let's check it out. That's a qualifying question. Any qualifying questions, Bill, that you've used that you like?
Well, I tend to start off truthfully with more informational questions. I call them informational. He calls them situational. What I think is important in a questioning set is to start off with questions that are easier for them to answer. I call it the elevator method. So here's the analogy I use. So if I get into an elevator, say I'm downtown Minneapolis, there's a 50-story building. I need to go to the 45th floor. I get in, I push the button, it goes up a couple of floors, and the doors open, and a beautiful woman, stunning woman, enters the elevator, and she presses 45-2, and we start going up together. And about 10 floors later, I turn to her and I say, "How you doing?" That's kind of uncomfortable for both of us because we decided this was going to be a quiet elevator ride for the first 10 floors. But if, on the other hand, the same scenario, the doors open, stunning woman comes in, and right as she comes in, I say, "How are you doing?" It's much more acceptable. It's okay because that's kind of the moment, but it's not creepy as if I waited 10 floors. I think the same thing is true with asking questions. When you're going to be in a sales situation, it's important to ask questions right away, not wait and not start talking to them and telling them everything about your product and then going, "Well, let me ask you a few questions." So you start with questions right away, and you start with easy questions that get the ball rolling, get a little momentum. We're going to talk about the Big Mo, get a little momentum going in your questions as well. So that's kind of how I start off my questioning set.
Yeah. And that's the first step in the process of spin selling, is situational questions. And these are collecting facts and information, background data about your customer's existing situation. Some simple ones would be, what equipment are you using now? How old is the unit? How many people work here? These are very simple, surfacey questions. So a couple of things to keep in mind is that these are used more in calls which fail and are overused by inexperienced salespeople. And
now, what do you mean by they're used in calls that fail? I need to know some of this stuff.
Right. Well, it is important, but looking at the entire sales conversation, They're used more in calls that do not give the desired outcome of a closed sale.
Okay, I would say though, Scott,
Yeah.
not that they're used, but that's all they use.
Right. Are used
Okay.
more. Yeah.
If
Exactly.
all I use is situational questions, I'm not going to get down to the, as he calls it, the needs payoff, the real important questions.
Right.
So I think the other thing to remember with these types of questions is you shouldn't ask any question you could have found out by looking at their website.
Right.
So, what do you do here? How long have you been in business? Questions that you can go and get that you should know and doing your pre-approach. You sound pretty stupid asking those up front. You want to ask questions, as you said, what equipment are you using now? That's not something I could find off their website.
Right.
So those are important questions that start to dig to the second level of the situation, but not what do you do here?
Right, exactly. Or sometimes you can look at something on a website, confirm it, and ask, besides that, are there other areas that you're working on developing that you have not made publicly yet?
That's right. So what I like about that is it shows that you've done a little bit of pre-approach.
Exactly. And you're asking more about the future, and you want to learn more about their priorities and their criteria and their values and the direction that they're going in the future. And that's where they're going to be working with you, is in the future. And one last thing on the situational questions is that buyers quickly become bored or impatient if there are too many situational questions.
That's right.
And everything of this is in the book. So I'm quoting right out of the book when I'm telling you about the situational questions as part of the step.
Yeah, I think that, again, they're important. They're a good way to get started, but don't live there, because this is not going to get you the information you need.
Yeah. So the next is problem questions. Experienced salespeople are more likely to ask questions like these. On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with the current equipment you're using? What are the disadvantages of the ways you're handling this now? And does this old machine give you reliability problems? Which is a close-ended question, but it can also confirm that there is a problem with the existing machine.
Right.
Some other things to keep in mind is each one probes for problems, difficulties, and dissatisfaction. The question that I like to use is, if they came out with a version 2.0, what would it have to have for you to buy it? So you're really getting them in tune with how they're using the current solution and identifying the gap of something that they don't have, so that you can propose a solution that includes both. And that's moving forward.
Yeah. What I like about that question, Scott, is you've thought about it. And you've tried it in the past, and you found out you've gotten some good results from that question. And so Scott uses that question over and over again. I use many of the same questions over and over again. And I have a little database of questions that I go back to before I start a call, and I prepare the questions. And that's what Scott does. And that's what professional salespeople do. He doesn't try to make it up as he goes along. We both go into a sale with questions already written down. Now, sometimes the customer will take us in a different direction, and that's okay. But I'm prepared with the questions I want. Scott's prepared with the questions he wants. We are not winging it and trying to come up with the questions on the fly. Although when we get to the end here, they're a little bit more difficult to prepare. The further you go in the spin process, the harder it is to prepare these questions, and I'll mention why later.
Yeah. And some of the things that the author is doing in each of the steps of the spin selling process is talking about small sales, larger sales, experienced salespeople, and inexperienced salespeople. So within the problem section of the spin selling questioning process, in smaller sales, the link is very strong. The more problem questions the seller asks, the greater the chance the call will be successful. However, in larger sales, the problem questions are not strongly linked to sales success, which I find very interesting. But thinking about it is, somebody talking about the problems is not solving the problems. And when you're talking with the prospect and the prospect is sharing information with you, you build trust and rapport, you're getting honest answers to the questions that you ask, but it's not strongly linked. We're going to get into the area that really is the pivot point of turning interest or disinterest into interest when it comes to prospects.
Well, I think what he's talking about here is that the answers you get to the problem questions tend to be more the implied needs, right? Which are not as strong as the explicit needs. Is that the other?
Yeah.
And so it's important then to get them to take them further into the pain. Just because I recognize that something's difficult to do or inconvenient, let's say, doesn't mean I'm ready to spend the money to make a change. This has to be higher implications, bigger challenges. What if? And I think that's the next level of questions, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It gets into the if then trade-off situational questions, problem questions, implication questions, and needs payoff questions can also be if then type of questions
Mm,
that we ask. But the last part of the problem section is that experienced salespeople have a higher proportion of problem questions. Experienced salespeople ask more problem questions. But keep in mind that we need to continue the process and not stop here, because we know in larger sales, problem questions are not strongly linked to sales success. So we need to get to the next level, which is the implication questions, the I in the spin selling
hmm.
model. Unfortunately, after the first two levels of questions, most salespeople stop asking questions and start delivering solutions. And I
That's
see this
right.
all of the time.
I tell
It's
it. I say this all the time. I see it when I do practice sessions in my classes. Scott,
Mhm.
we'll say, okay, we really want to dig deep on these questions, and I call them different things, and implication and needs payoff. But they're doing the same thing. They're driving the pain deeper. They're saying what's going to happen if you don't change this, and over and over again, the salespeople find one little thing. Oh, we need this, and then they pull out their catalog
yeah, yeah.
and they start selling to the first need.
Hmm.
And in almost every uh, scenario that I create, there's a primary need, something that's going to come out early that maybe is a $5,000 sale, and then there's a secondary need, which might be a $50,000 sale if they'll keep asking questions, but they almost never do.
Right, right.
So I didn't do the research, but I've certainly found that Rackham is 100% correct on this.
Yeah, yeah. And it's still true today. Amazing how that's the case. It's still true today. And here's a situation, and I gotta believe that this is part of the underlying current as to why salespeople do this, is that they get out their calculator and their catalog and they start selling on price. And they think that a lower price is going to create a new customer. And it simply doesn't, because
Mm-hmm.
I've asked them, I said, have you ever come into a situation where you come up with a lower price and they don't buy from you? Yes. I go, why? They go, I don't know. I said, that's what we should be working on, because they didn't see the value.
That's my only value statement is price.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other interesting thing is this behavior is rewarded. So I see the first little need. I start
Mm-hmm.
to sell to it. It's a couple of $1,000s and they buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure. I need those earplugs,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I can sell you 100,000 earplugs for this. Okay. That sounds fine. Okay. All right. Thanks for the meeting. It was really good seeing you. And we're done. And we think, hey, I won. I got $2,000 worth of earplugs sold. And if I dug, there's a $100,000 fire alarm system that needs to be installed. And I
Mm-hmm.
missed the whole thing because I was cheering myself for getting the little sale. And so
Yeah.
we don't even know. We don't
Right.
even know, Scott, that we missed the big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And research has shown that the implication questions are strongly linked to success in larger sales. So now we're getting into what has the greatest impact on larger sales. Implication questions, more than problem questions or situational questions, is they have the biggest payoff on the larger sales,
Mm-hmm.
because they build up a customer's perception of value. And these questions are harder than any situational questions or problem questions that you could ask. So
Yep.
they get down to the emotions. This is the crux of the sales model: is people buy emotionally. Implication questions are emotional. Something like, how does this affect the output of your assembly line? Or will this slow down your proposed expansion? Or will this lead to increased costs? Those are all emotional questions that people feel when they're asked by a seller or a salesperson.
Absolutely. And I think that these are the things that cause them to dig deeper into their thinking about whether this is really a problem that I need to solve, or whether
Mhm.
it's a problem that I can just kind of push to the side for now and I don't need to deal with. We all know that our tendency as people is to push things to the side until they become big enough.
Yeah.
That's the explicit problem. It's not
Right.
explicit yet. Our goal as a salesperson is to try and help them feel that it soon will be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is getting them to feel, as you say, emotionally, wait, I hadn't thought about the implications of these problems. And now you're
Right.
causing me to think about them. That's why most salespeople don't want to ask this question. It's causing their customer to think.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And the last is the needs payoff. So N in the spin selling model is, these are the payoff questions. These positive solution centered needs payoff questions, like, is it important for you to solve this problem today or by the end of the month or this year? Um, Why would you find the solution useful? What else would you get from it besides this? How do you see this working here? And you're starting to see them visualizing the application of your solution or your product, and they're painting a picture in their mind of owning it. And that's the payoff that they're going to get when they decide to buy from you.
What I like about these questions, Scott, is they push the customer, the prospect, into the future, thinking about now things are going better and this problem has been solved. How do you feel about that? How much time does that give you if you don't have to do this? What would happen if we were able to work with your sales team and increase your sales by 10% with new customers? What would that mean to you? And so that really starts them to think, what does my future really need to be? I need to do something now to create a better future. And if I don't, I'm going to be stuck with the past.
And be left behind. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Two things to close out this section is the needs payoff questions. They focus the customer's attention on the solution rather than the problems and get the customer thinking and telling you about the benefits that they're going to be receiving when they decide to work with you. And when you can put those two things together and get the customer thinking about that, I think they overcome their own objections because they end up buying it themselves and understanding the objections of making a decision are a normal process. It's not always going to be perfect when you go through that situation.
Yeah, if that payoff is big enough, I overcome my own objections.
Exactly.
Right? We talked last week about my computer having some problems picking up the printer. So if I can never pick up that printer, or I have to do something, or I look at my computer and I think it's old, I've got to get to the point where it's worth doing all the changeover that I have to do to get a new computer. And so that problem has to be big enough, not just to solve a little problem, but to solve a problem. And if I turn my computer on, I get the blue screen of death, it's too late. It's too late. Right. And so a good salesperson would make me feel like, so if we don't change your computer system now, what happens if it all blows up? Because it's right on the edge. Right. And then I have to start thinking about that. Excellent topic, Scott.
Yeah, it is. Next week, we're going to have a guest, Mike Weinberg. Will be with us, and he's going to be talking about his new book. So you've got a chance to start now and focus on chapters 4, and the second half is from 88 to 98. So just 10 pages in the next section. So start on that. We're going to cover that in 2 weeks.
All right, excellent. I just love that chapter. You know that I'm big on questioning, so
yeah,
that's really the key. All right, well, our big topic today is called creating the big mo, and by mo, of course, we mean momentum, right? Anyone's played sports, you felt the value of creating momentum in your game where the opponent can't seem to catch their breath or catch up on the score. We talk in terms of physics or physical laws, which I mentioned before. Momentum is equal to mass, or how heavy an object is, times velocity or speed. So momentum is mass moving in a particular direction, like a rock rolling downhill has momentum. Some might also say that's power. That's why a full dump truck going at 50 miles an hour is going to do a lot more damage than a smart car going at 50 miles an hour and hit something, right?
Right.
So it can also be why it's easier to stop your car at the railroad crossing than to expect the train to stop at the railroad crossing as you get hit by it, because they can't stop. I mean, hundreds of thousands of pounds in a train moving in a particular direction, it can take them miles to stop that because of momentum. So I think, Scott, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've got some notes that I'm working on a presentation about this, but I think because we people are physical, we live in a physical world. These laws of physics apply to us as well, but they don't only apply to us in the physical world. I think they also apply to us psychologically. They work on us psychologically. So what I mean that is from a psychological or emotional standpoint, we can take advantage of momentum. So that's what I want to talk about. How to get momentum in your selling, how to use it to be more successful. Scott's kind of your thoughts on that.
I think about the global approach to this topic, and it includes your entire life. It's not just your selling career, work. I mean, this includes your life, your family, your future. And it now is the time to really start to prioritize your life and decide what you can and want to give up. This is a chance to really evaluate everything that you have in your life. If you want to gain greater momentum, you might have to shed some things that are holding it back.
Yeah.
And those could be some beliefs. They could be some behaviors, some practices, some habits. This topic is going to go right along with what do you want to give up?
The nice thing about momentum, Scott, is I think it can break, if we can build enough momentum, not worrying about those things, we break through them before we even realize we had those barriers. So kind of the glass ceiling, if all of a sudden we have a sale and we make $100,000 and we keep our momentum going and have another big sale, all of a sudden we're like, wow, I never thought I could make $200,000, but now I have, and I know I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've blown through that. So let me go through some of these laws, and I'll try not to talk all the time because I'm really excited about this topic. But here's the first thing we need to do to create momentum. We need to break free from inertia. Now, Newton's first law, again, we'll get into some physical laws here, states that an object at rest tends to stay at rest unless acted upon by a force. Meaning, if I'm sitting on my butt, some days it's just hard to get going. So I'm laying in bed. We've all felt that feeling. Laying in bed, it's nice and warm, cold morning. I've got inertia. I don't want to get out of bed, but the alarm goes off and I force myself, boom, in that moment to get going. That's a step. That's the first step in developing momentum. We don't always feel like working hard. Sometimes it's rainy and cold outside, or maybe it's too nice outside and I just can't get motivated. So maybe I'll just read a few things to get online to get rolling, right? Oh, I'm getting slow today. Let me look online. And then all of a sudden I'm looking at the news article, and then I'm looking at the website, and then I'm looking at YouTube, and all of a sudden half the morning is gone.
Right.
And I used the wrong thing to get rolling. I didn't get rolling in my job. I got rolling in a distraction. So we just, all we need is that little spark that pushes you out of bed, that little spark that says, turn off the YouTube and put on something that you should be dealing with. Start working on your phone list, write your list of things to do, anything to do that, and get yourself going. All these are just a decision away to break free from inertia. It's just, that's what we have. We're not a rock sitting there waiting for a force. The force is our own mental ability to say, boom, I'm going to start doing something right.
Wow. That is so powerful, Bill, and so relevant in our lives when we have choices to make, and we can have a choice of not to do anything. I mean, it's amazing how when you think about what you're going to give up and gaining that momentum, you're going to be able to achieve a higher speed faster if you give certain stuff up.
Yeah.
And once you do that, then you start picking up momentum, and then you say, I'm not going to attach myself to that anymore. And then
that's right, because I don't have time, because I've got other things that are more important that I want to do.
Exactly. Yep. So true. Great point.
All right. And the second part is create a positive routine. And I think COVID really wrecked everybody's routine. We used to get up in the morning, a couple hours before work. We took a shower. We put on some nice clothes. We drove into an office. And then all of a sudden we had COVID. They said, don't come in the office. So we got up 50 minutes later, stayed in our jammies, put on a shirt that we could get away with, and combed our hair, put on a ball cap. And now we have no momentum. We just feel like we're at home and it's all relaxed, and let's kick back, and I got to walk the dog, and the kid's crying, I got to take care of that, and I'll have a little bit of ice cream, and all of a sudden nothing's getting done because we don't have a good routine. So even if you're staying at home, you need to figure out a good routine. Anybody who's successful has a good starting routine. So get back to basics, get up early, take a shower, dress if that's what you need to do, put some business dress on, get started 30 minutes earlier. And I would say have that prioritized task list done the night before. So you're ready, and it's right there on top of your computer or your work surface. There's not a bunch of junk everywhere. And you get up and there's that list, and you go, boom, here's the first thing I'm going to do. And you get going, you tackle it, accomplish something, your self-esteem will rise.
Wow. Creating a routine creates something that is predictable, and you've created the routine. So you're creating the predictability of your life. And when you do that, things are expected to happen and your stress level goes down. Think about raising a child. You set a routine with the child. I'm not going to pick them up every time they're crying in the crib. I'm going to let them be comfortable doing that, and they'll cry themselves to sleep, as tough as that is. But as you set a routine of how to they interact with their parents, and the children end up controlling the parents. And that's not a healthy routine.
Absolutely. All right. Number 3, create a few small wins. So sometimes it's, we're going to run a race. We don't start off at mile 13 going full speed, right? We need to make sure, first of all, like I said in the last section, we got on the proper running clothes, the proper shoes, the gun goes off, and we start off with the first few steps. We don't start off at full speed. We start off at a slow trot, get our bodies warmed up, kind of get things going. Same with sales. Don't try and start off calling General Mills or calling the most difficult customer on your list. Start off by calling a few customers that know and like you. Have a couple of good conversations with them about how things are going. Get warmed up. Get some things moving. Same as a process for a start off with a new sales conversation with a new client. Just as we talked before, I think you start off by asking a few questions that are easy, show that you've done some research on their company, and it gets the ball rolling. So getting that ball rolling, that old euphemism, get the ball rolling, heck, that's momentum. So you're trying to get the ball rolling in your discussion, in your day, with a few small wins.
So true. And they all add up. This topic is really important when I think you and I are asked, what kind of ROI can I expect by inviting you in and paying you money? What's my percentage increase in sales? I said, well, it's going to be tough to measure within the first month or the first quarter. But here's a small win, is that the people that work for you are going to feel better about their jobs, and they're going to represent the company better out in public with your customers through an improved attitude. Yeah, that is a small win that contributes to a greater, better outcome, but it's a small win.
Oh my gosh. Every time I teach, I see attitude issues in the company that don't always show up until you're training. And then somebody, you can just see their attitude. They're wearing it on their sleeve, and they do that with customers too. Yeah. And you don't even realize it because they seem to be successful. Now, this number 4 here is one of the most difficult ones for me, and that is build on your wins. So you have some good things going. It's not time to go wander around and take a break and get another coffee. It's time to step on the gas and build on that winning pace. You have a good appointment, stop at some of the local offices, see if you can pick up a name card, somebody else that you can talk to. If you have a couple of good phone calls, pick out another list and start making some more phone calls. Instead of just being happy with 1 or 2 appointments, get 4 or 5 appointments, break the record, go for the gold. This is where you start to build momentum. And so many people slack off just when they're starting to build the momentum because they got to win.
Yeah, their win is making their quota. And if they made their annual quota in the first quarter, they stop working. I mean, this happened to me. I was competing with a guy, and he made his quota in the first quarter. He made a huge sale, made his quota in the first quarter. I kept trucking, I kept calling, I kept selling. By the end of the year, I doubled my quota because I kept working. He stopped, and he still had the same number at the end of the year. I doubled mine.
Yeah. He got a lot of newspaper reading in. He got the crossword puzzles done.
So true. God, I remember he'd bring his pork chop rolled up in tinfoil and eat it at his desk for breakfast. It was just disgusting. But, that was his routine.
And obviously a non-productive routine.
Right, exactly.
Well, not one that build on. Okay, another difficult thing to do, carry the momentum on to the next day. So we have a really good day. What do we do to keep our momentum? Keep it going from day to day. Here's some suggestions. Have your to-do list ready. Don't start your day off by doing your to-do list because that just puts you behind in a fairly non-productive activity. But all those things you needed to do, they're much fresher in your brain at the end of day 1 than the beginning of day 2. Have your call list ready to go. Don't be spending hours trying to put together a call list when you should be making phone calls. So have that call list of 20 or 30 or whatever the number of names and the follow-up that you're going to do that day. Be prepared for any appointments that you're going to have that day. Again, don't try to stop in the middle of your momentum to start doing some research on that company that you're going to call on. Have that research already done. So don't let your preparation time steal your customer momentum.
I think along in the same lines as preparation is some of those distractions. If I find myself wandering on Facebook, for instance, at 10:30 in the morning, I think about that going, this is really preventing me from getting the stuff done that I need to get done. I'll get to my desk a half hour early and I'll take care of those distractions and make it a priority to get rid of them so that I can concentrate on the work that needs to be done. It's the same thing by preparing for the day is also preparing to get the distractions out of the way.
Yeah. Well, you've alluded to number 6 in that answer, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
And that is stay focused on your main objective.
Yeah.
So often if we don't know what our main objective is, everything looks like it has value. But if I really know my objective is to double my sales quota this month, as you were doing in your example, then when you find yourself on Facebook, you go, wait a minute, stop. This isn't building toward my main objective. I need to go back and revisit what my main objective is. But the computer is particularly good at helping us forget what our main objective is and start looking at Facebook or YouTube or whatever it is that is our distraction. So you've got to gain momentum. And by throwing away those other objectives and opportunities and distractions, some of them are just dumb, like Facebook, right? Some of them can be good. Maybe it's a chance to be on a nonprofit board or do a speech or coach your kids' baseball team. And all those are really attractive things, and they're good things. But if they're not contributing to the commitment you made to your major goal, put those to the side for now until you hit your goal. And then, so we have to learn how to say no. If we can't say no, we can't achieve success.
Yeah, it's so true. Learn to say no. And that's why what are you going to give up? What are you going to say no to? It's going to make your life better. It's a great question. It's tough to answer, though.
Well, especially when those things look good. I'd love to coach my kids' ball team, except they practice at 3:30.
Yeah, no.
That means I need to stop working every day at 3:30 and make some excuse. So don't do that. Okay, finally, number 7, and we're going a little long today, but keep developing your skill set. Now, I know this is a drum that Scott and I bang on a regular basis. I know that our listeners have heard it before, but I don't think you're all doing something about it. It still holds true. Books, podcasts, classes, personal coaching are all great ways to learn and grow. And if you're not doing those things, you are missing out. If you're not reading Spin Selling and just listen to us talk about it, you're missing out. There's things that the opportunity for you to go, oh my gosh, that's the thing I need. It's not always there because you're not reading the book. You're just listening to us. Find a system, develop one of your own, but every day, sharpen your talent. I know Scott and I have talked to each other and said, just by doing this podcast, it causes us to sharpen our talent. We have to think of new ideas, or Scott comes up with a topic and I have to do a little research on my own to say, what am I going to talk about as far as this topic is concerned? So keep yourself sharp, challenge yourself, do a book club at your work, start to talk about it, build some momentum in your learning, and you're going to be better at what you do.
Great topic, Bill. I mean, you introduced a lot of things that people can think about today, and they can start applying today, and they can start getting a better outcome tomorrow because of their behavior shift today on the momentum that they have in their life. So great topic. So next week, we're going to have Mike Weinberg as a guest, and he's going to be talking about his new book, First Time Managers for Sales, and we're going to be doing a book giveaway. So you can go to our website, winningatselling.com. This is episode 586, and fill out the form, enter the book drawing, and we've got a couple books to give away. Also, check out PSA, Professional Sales Association. The website is psamn.org. Bill's the president of that group. I'm the past president of the group. We're both emotionally committed to that organization, and we
have great speakers, Scott, every month. Yeah. Great speakers. Next one's November 3rd. Guess what we're going to talk about? Asking better questions. Asking better questions. Boom. So right in the topic today.
And you can join virtually and check out PSAMN.
Anywhere in the world. That's right.
Yeah. Our golden nugget is, I must be willing to give up what I am in order to become what I want to be.
Wow.
By Albert Einstein. And I thought
it must be good because he's really smart.
He is smart. He is really smart. And I just think about the momentum and shedding stuff and getting rid of stuff and stop doing the stuff that doesn't bring you joy and happiness and creates a distraction in feeling like you're being productive.
Well, I have a little card on my desk. It's one of those successories. Remember successories? I don't know if they aren't around anymore. But it says you can't steal second if you have your foot on first.
Right.
You can't steal second if you keep your foot on first. You've got to take a chance sometime. And creating big momentum means you got to take a chance. I like that quote.
Exactly. Thank you. Again, next week, we have a guest. The following week, pages 88 through 98. So please subscribe and share this podcast with your colleagues on social media and your professional networks.
Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.